You're listening to the Business Brain Fit podcast. This is episode 125.
Welcome to the podcast that gives you direct access to the world's leading business building experts. Head to MaxMyProfit.com.au to catch up on past episodes, download your free business growth tools, and access show notes for every single episode. Now here's your host, Ben Futrell.
Well, g'day and welcome back to the Business Brain Fit podcast. This, my friend, is the podcast that's 100% devoted to taking you and your business to the next level. And the good news is, doesn't matter whether you're brand new to this business thing, so maybe you're just scratching this entrepreneurial itch, or maybe you're like myself and you've been in business for a long, long time and you've got the scars and wounds to prove it. There's always something new we can do to take our business to the next level. Today's absolutely no different. Really stoked to have Andrew Griffiths back on the show. If you didn't catch Andrew's last one, we talked about why a book is your best business card last time I chatted to Andrew. But Andrew is I don't know if he's a quiet achiever. He's definitely an achiever. Very successful entrepreneurial guy, Australian businessman, had many businesses, probably about a dozen businesses. But he's also Australia's #1 small business and entrepreneurial author. He's got 12 books sold in over 60 countries, and he's been described as a street smart entrepreneur. He bought his first business at the age, I think, of 17 or 18, and since then, for the best part of 30 years, he's owned and operated many businesses, as I said. Today, what he's all about is inspiring and energizing entrepreneurs by sharing his own experiences, which is exactly what we're going to do on today's podcast. And, you know, the feedback I've been getting of some of the recent interviews where we've been talking to entrepreneurs about their journey, about the challenges that they've had, the fears that they've faced, and what they think has made them successful, has then led me to go, you know what, I want to find a few more entrepreneurs to jump onto the show that we can chat to find out what it is that they think is their secret sauce. Now, I don't think there's any one thing, but I know you're going to take a whole bunch of lessons out of this because, you know, Andrew's an amazing guy. And, you know, he's got to be one of my all-time favourite guys to talk to, but also I love reading his books. You know, he's got 12 books. They're really easy books to read, but jam-packed, full of great stuff. And, you know, it's so hard to find things these days, and all this world of noise and media and craziness going on, that you can find that's succinct, it's easy to read, easy to implement, and you get results fast. And that's why I've always loved the work of Andrew. He's an amazing guy. So we'll get him on the show very shortly. Before I do that, I want to say welcome. If you're a first-time listener to the Business Brain Food podcast, welcome aboard. Welcome to the show. It's like welcome to the jungle. But, you know, I think Andrew might want to keep away from the jungle when you hear about his stories with his animal encounters. But anyway, welcome to the show. It's good to have you here as a listener. Make sure you go back and listen to some of the previous episodes because we've got a whole bunch of amazing people that we've already pre-recorded that you can go back and listen. That's one of the good things about a podcast is the content is there for you to listen forever, unlike radio where it disappears. Even radio stations these days are recording it in podcasts. So go back and listen to some of the previous episodes, and I'm sure you'll find some gold nuggets in there that you'll enjoy to listen to, and hopefully will help you implement some stuff in your business. If you are a long-time listener, so this is your 125th episode, welcome back, and thank you for being so loyal and listening in. I really am enjoying, producing the show every week, and I love to get your feedback. So if you are enjoying the show, please jump into the iTunes store. I think I say it every week, but that's only because you haven't done it yet. Jump into the iTunes store, leave an honest review or rating, let everyone know what you think about the Business Brain Fit podcast, and and that way, I read all the responses I see in iTunes, and that way people that come across the show will also know what they can expect by listening into the show. Alrighty, so as I said today, we are talking about the word entrepreneur, or what defines an entrepreneur. I've got Andrew coming onto the show because he is an entrepreneur. This guy is amazing. When it comes to business, I don't know too many people that have got the experience that you've got. And when I'm talking about experience, I'm talking about small business experience, not textbook stuff, but actual experience. And you're going to hear some of the stories. Some of the things are going to shock you. Some of the things are going to make you laugh. Some of the things are going to make you cry. And I shouldn't laugh as I say that, because it's just, if it happened to you, what has happened to Andrew in the past, some of these things, I'm sure that those emotions would run wild. He's also the only Australian columnist that works with Inc.com, which is that global entrepreneurial site. If you don't read it, you should go and read it. It gets 18 million visitors per month. And he writes for a lot of other local things like Flying Solo, which is an awesome solo entrepreneur community in Australia. So when it comes to things entrepreneurial and things business, besides his 12 books, this guy knows his stuff. He's also a TEDx speaker. I saw his TEDx speech happening up in Cairns. And, I think you're going to love it. So without any further delay, let's just get Andrew onto the podcast and let's start, diving deep is what I'm going to call these sort of sessions with these entrepreneurs on the show. We're going to dive deep and find out what it is that makes Andrew tick, what it is that's made him successful, and see, you'll be able to learn from it.
Business Brain Food.
So, it's always exciting when I get a past guest back on the show. And I've got to say, I've been watching Andrew over the last, couple of years since he was on the show last time. Some of the stuff he's doing is amazing. So it's an absolute pleasure. And I'm excited to have you back on the show, mate. Welcome back to the Business Brain Food podcast.
Well, thanks, Ben, and nice to be invited back. Normally people don't invite me back once I've been there once. It's like I'm pretty impressed.
Well, you didn't leave too much of a mess behind last time, so you've been welcome back on. Now, I don't know if you remember last time we did the show, I asked you the same question. I ask every guest when we start off an interview with the same question. That is for you to share something quirky about yourself.
It's time for something quirky. And now, something quirky.
Okay, so my quirky thing is I was once held captive by a monkey in a cabin in Borneo.
What?
And so I was in the middle of nowhere. It was my 30th birthday, and I had found this little cabin that was basically abandoned, and I was sleeping in this cabin, hiking through the middle of the jungle. And I remember opening the door first thing the next morning to leave, and there was this giant monkey that was standing like 2 inches away from my face. I had an orange in my hand. This monkey just grabbed the orange and opened its mouth, and these giant teeth erupted. I thought it was going to bite me face off. And I literally slammed the door shut. And this monkey then sat on the porch and tried to break into this little cabin in various ways throughout the rest of the day. I was literally held prisoner by this monkey for an entire day.
Oh, my gosh.
I've had a lot of funny animal experiences, Ben. I've been attacked by an octopus, sexually molested by a pelican. I've been attacked by a week's-tailed eagle. I've rescued fairy penguins. I'm a frustrated David Attenborough is what I am.
I'm surprised you go outside anymore.
Look, there are days when it's probably better for the humanity and the wildlife population if I didn't, but I think that they are definitely out to get me. I got stung by a bee in Bali recently, and I'm not allergic to bees. We all get, how big a deal is that? Stung by it, didn't give it a second thought. My legs swelled up like I was Elephant Man, and it looked like I was going to have to go to freaking intensive care in the hospital.
So it would be fair to say you keep away from the zoo, eh? You don't go to the zoo.
Yeah, exactly. And I love animals. They don't love me, Ben.
No, I was about to say, it sounds like a one-way relationship anyway.
I know.
Well, as dubbed Australia's #1 small business and entrepreneurial author, I'm really excited to talk to you today about entrepreneurialism, because I hear this word thrown out a whole bunch, right? We see it in people's LinkedIn profiles, and I really want to understand a bit more about what makes an entrepreneur, what you think makes an entrepreneur, and
sure.
and I would definitely class you as a successful entrepreneur. So maybe kick off. Do you believe in that word? Is that a word that you encompass? Is that something that you relate to?
Look, I do. I think it's interesting, though, because if I've got 300, 400, 500 small business owners in a room, and I said to you, how many of you are entrepreneurs? Most of the time, no one will put up their hand. People don't necessarily look at themselves as an entrepreneur. And it's a word that someone, often I have people say to me, Richard Branson is an entrepreneur. Elon Musk is an entrepreneur. I'm not. I'm running a business. And I've often found it strange that we have this disconnect between, running a small business and being an entrepreneur. From my experience, anyone running a small business is an entrepreneur. In my view, that's how I look at it. So it's a funny kind of a definition.
Yeah. So, what do you think actually defines an entrepreneur? Is it just that you register a business name, you're an entrepreneur? Or is it that you've got some scars and wounds? So I saw somebody else doing the speaking circuit, and he was saying, stop calling yourself entrepreneurs unless you've got the scars and the wounds and the experience. You can't call yourself an entrepreneur.
Really?
Yeah.
I totally disagree with that. My view on it is, if anyone who kind of makes something and someone else buys it. So they come up with the idea, they make it, they create it, they put it in a format that someone will buy it, and then someone does buy it, and they're successful in that transaction. That to me is an entrepreneur. Whether you're a 7-year-old kid, a great friend of mine, Brie, her little boy, 7 years old, was selling bracelets on the side of the road, at the front of his place to raise some money. He's an entrepreneur. You know, for me, without a doubt, he bought the bracelets while he was in Bali for nothing, and he's put a markup on them, and he set up a little stand with a sign. That's an entrepreneur. As much as I see a person who is a Jim's Mowing kind of franchise or a cleaner, my cleaner is an entrepreneur. You know, the lady that comes, a Russian lady, beautiful woman who comes and cleans my place a couple of times a week. To me, she's an entrepreneur, but she would never consider herself an entrepreneur.
Yeah, no, good distinction. I think, and I sort of agree with you. If you're willing to take that step to do something to serve somebody in a way that you think is different to somebody else, and to take that risk, you know, you're an entrepreneur. It's entrepreneurial thinking, isn't it?
It is, and you know, and most of the time, for most of us, I would imagine, we reach a stage in our life at some probably early stage where we realise that we're basically unemployable, and our only other option is to make our own business, do our own business, and try and make a living out of doing that. But I also kind of think we get a little bit caught up in the semantics around it, and it's like, well, you know, realistically, anyone who is brave enough to do their own business, to me, really qualifies to be an entrepreneur, because it takes bravery to start your own thing, to buy a business, you know, whatever it is you do. And I think that's probably one of the most defining moments. I mean, I've done it all my life. I only had a job really for a few years I'm 51 now, so I had 3 or 4 years where I kind of worked for someone else here or there. And unsuccessfully, I think, generally, but it was like the rest of the time, it's always been me making my own living. And that's another way that I kind of define entrepreneurialism. If you're responsible for making your own living, you're not getting a weekly pay packet, and there's nothing wrong with getting a weekly pay packet, but that if you're responsible for, you know, feeding yourself, doing all that kind of stuff, well, you know, then in that way that I think you're an entrepreneur.
Yeah. And what were those jobs you had in the beginning? So let's go way back when. You know, I'm going to make you think back about, you know,
100 years.
Yeah.
All types of things. I mean, real jobs. I mean, I started my first business when I was 18. I bought a dive shop in Sydney when I was 18. But before then, I'd worked I used to work for, my first kind of real job was after school was to work in a little pizza place. And the guy running it was basically a drug dealer. So people would come in and order these special pizzas. And I was totally naive to what was kind of going on, of course. And there'd be these special knocks on the back gate of the business. And I would have to take these brown paper bags to the guys at the back gate. And my boss would tell me that they were supplying us with oregano. You know, and I would go, oh, okay. You know, it's an oregano dealer coming at 9 o'clock at night to make a delivery and stuff like that. But anyway.
And that's what you want on your pizza, extra oregano.
Yeah. And the people that would come in and, I'd like a special number 13, please. And these guys would do all this dodgy stuff. And I remember how, when I finally realised what was going on, I think I'd been there for a year and I had no idea. But anyway, so I worked in exploration for an exploration company for a while in the Great Sandy Desert in Western Australia. That's when I got attacked by a weech-tailed eagle, rather. I'm a commercial diver by trade, so that's how I kind of started out in the workforce. That's hence why I bought a dive shop. So I worked as a commercial diver for a Japanese company as well in Cairns. But most of my businesses have been, you know, advisory stuff. I've sold encyclopedias door to door on commission. In Tasmania, I started a travel company and sold that, a publishing company and sold that. But I've mainly marketing companies, all different types of things. So I've had a kind of a good mix of my own entrepreneurial stuff for the majority of my life, but also had a little bit of a taste of working for other businesses in there as well.
Do you remember what it was that sparked you to say, you know what, I'm not going to work for someone else, I'm going to go and start my own business?
To be honest, Ben, I don't really. And it's interesting because I bought this business, the dive shop, when I was 18 in the 80s, when you could walk into the bank and say, I'm 18, I've got no family and no assets, and they'd give you a check for 25 grand or whatever it was. I miss the 80s a lot.
Yeah.
But I was never an entrepreneur in the true sense of the word, I guess. I didn't grow up in a particularly, not in an entrepreneurial environment at all. I was probably entrepreneurial at school. Like, I did sell things that I probably shouldn't have sold. I was always kind of wheeling and dealing. So even though I say I wasn't that entrepreneur, I wasn't entrepreneurial because I'd grown up in an entrepreneurial family, but I was probably the exact opposite of that, really. But I was entrepreneurial by nature. I was a hustler at a relatively young age, even though I was naive to what was going on in the pizza shop.
Yeah.
And so that probably launched it. But then when I bought the business, of course, I had no idea what to do, absolutely no idea, and I made every mistake known to mankind. And I didn't understand profit and loss. I didn't know how to balance a checkbook back then. I didn't know how to. I didn't know anything, Ben. And of course, I made ridiculous mistakes. Got to know my bank manager because every morning he'd swing by and give me the checks that I'd bounced the day before. All of those kind of horror stories. I had to sleep in the dive shop because most of the time I couldn't afford to put petrol in the car. I had a full-time job in a bottle shop, actually, when I had the dive shop for the first 2 years because it wasn't making any money. So I'd have a full-time job and then try and run this business, trying to just, the things that we do, the battle scars that we have are ironic. But, of course, I also look back at that business with the fondest of memories because I think that was a business that really got me started down the path I am. It's wonderful stuff to talk about now as a speaker. And I cut my teeth in I had to, I learned a great deal and made a ton of mistakes and had some pretty crazy stuff happen. But I kind of knew that after the dive shop, I was unemployable. I realized that I needed to do my own thing. I'm too pig-headed to work for someone else.
Yeah. Well, I think that's happens to a lot of people that own business. I mean, it sounds like you stuck at that for a while and you had a second job full-time trying to make it work. Did you feel like you stuck at it too long or that you did the right thing when you look back?
That's a really great question, actually. I guess for me it was like a university degree. What actually happened in the end was I lost the dive shop, but not in the conventional way. I had a business partner, a guy who worked for me who wanted to buy into the business. I said, sure, you can buy in, but I need to go on a holiday. And I said, pay me when I get back. I went on a holiday out in a boat in the middle of the ocean chasing whales, and I came back and the dive shop was gone. So this guy had bought a whole pile of gear. He had sold it all. He told everyone that he was buying in and renovated the store. So he sold all of our school gear, sold our boats, sold everything, our compressors, and basically did a runner. So I got back and literally in my dive shop, I went into it and there was tumbleweed kind of going across the floor. Wow. This guy literally unbolted the kitchen sink and took the kitchen sink.
Wow.
And I was left with all the debts, all the money that was owed, the whole thing, because, he hadn't signed the paperwork and I wasn't very experienced and I was the guy that owned it. So he racked up a couple $100,000 of debt for gear and all the rest of it. And and it was a very, very big learning lesson. So it wasn't really a matter that I hung on too long. It was probably a matter that, because the shop was actually going really well then, and I just started to make it work financially, and that's when it was a time to take in a partner to relax a little bit, have a bit of extra cash, and do all of that usual stuff. So a great learning lesson, though. I'm not resentful to him, to be honest. These days I was. But, again, it's all stuff that has got me to where I am today.
But if he's listening, can you bring the sink back?
Oh, yeah, I spent quite a lot of time saving up money to get him killed. Let's not lose perspective here that, I would have engaged as a monkey to freaking track him down and kill him. There was a long time there that I was very, very angry young man about the whole thing and hardly done by. But it was like, well, you got to move beyond that and go, my philosophy for this stuff, if it ended up costing me a couple $100,000, well, he's probably saved me a couple $1 million. In mistakes that I would have made down the line. And that's my philosophy to those things.
But at that time, I'm sure that you weren't probably thinking that way. I mean, and this is interesting. I love to go back in time and reflect on some of these things because it's these things that happen to us in our journey. No doubt, for you, it would have been a defining moment in the way that you behaved or paid attention to certain details in a business. What are some of the greatest lessons that you took away from that?
Some of the greatest lessons, I think, were probably, number one, to listen to my gut instinct. I never really trusted this guy, and I kind of talked myself out of that, rather than actually listen to my intuition. These days, and since then, my intuition is my number one business tool in everything that I do. And whenever I don't listen to it, the situation turns to tears, and my intuition is laughing at me, going, "Hey, I told you." The other thing I learnt was to be more responsible in business. Like if my name is on the checkbook or on the deeds or whatever you want to call it, then I have to step up and take responsibility. And that's what I had to do in this situation. I owed this money. I had to pay it back however I could. And I could blame him. I could be the victim. And I wore that hat for a while, and then I went, you know what? I got to work. I got to find money and pay the debts, and I've got to step up and take responsibility for that myself. that was probably the second of my biggest realizations. And the third thing that I had to learn was to let go of disasters. There's a pretty good chance I was going to make some more. I knew that I would be an entrepreneur and in business for the rest of my life predominantly, and I was bound to make more mistakes, and I could either beat myself up every time I did that, or I could come up with a better way of looking at it and learn from it, which is, like I just mentioned there, for me, whatever it cost me in that mistake was, I've got to say, well, that's an investment. If it's cost me, I tell you what, any of us that have lost a lot of money because of something, we've learned the lesson. I had a client go broke on me a few years back and lost $300,000. And you look at that and go, wow, did I learn a serious lesson? Sure did. But again, I believe that loss will have saved me $3 million, if it hasn't already, in some shape or form based on the learning that I've received from that. And you've been around for a long time, Ben. Well, not as long as me.
Not as long as you.
You're under 100, right?
I haven't been raped by a pelican yet, so
it's only a matter of time, buddy. But it is all about business, isn't it? About learning, growing, reframing what it is. I meet way too many people in business that are bitter and twisted and jaded. And you go, man, that ain't going to help you. You got to let go of that. If someone's done you wrong, you can hang on to that. But the only person that's going to suffer from that is you and your business. So we got to get good at letting go and moving on. We got to get good at not beating ourselves up when we make mistakes. That kind of stuff I'm very big in, mate. I don't mean to go off the beaten path there, Ben.
Yeah,
but I believe in that stuff a great deal.
It's a great lesson too, though. I mean, I'm just thinking about what I would have done, earlier on in my life had that have happened to me. And there would have been a possibility, I don't know, because I wasn't in that situation, that I would have just given up and gone and got a job. Maybe, that, 'cause like I said, it's a defining moment in time. Was there any time when you thought this is all just too hard, I'm not going to bother?
Probably only about 1 or 2 million times.
Yeah.
I would imagine, in my life, again, isn't it? It's that funny thing. I think that we always think the grass is greener, right? So everyone else's business is far easier than ours. Like everyone else, like you look at that guy running a coffee shop, go, God, how easy. You kind of stroll up around 7, pour a couple of espressos, make a bit of cinnamon toast. It's how hard could it be to run a coffee shop? And here I am running a marketing business, for example, and it's hard and complicated. And I've got all these demanding clients. And of course, you have a conversation with a coffee shop owner, and he would give his right arm to be running a marketing company where he had this nice office and people would come in and respect him and all the rest of it. So we think everyone else's business is so much easier and better than ours. And it's the same thing with having a job. It all kind of sounds nice to have a job and get a nice salary and all the rest of it. And then you kind of go, you know what? There's a price to pay for everything. And I can't work for someone else. It was a realization early in my life that I'm just not capable of doing that side of things. I'm too entrepreneurial. I'm too strong-willed. And if I don't know how to say this without sounding arrogant or whatever, but if they're frustrating, if they're unethical, all those kind of things, I just can't be there. So the best way to combat that is to, work for yourself.
Just work for yourself. Now, you said a bit earlier that you've always behaved like an entrepreneur, and one of the words you used was hustle. And I've seen this being branded everywhere. You got to hustle. You got to work 19 hours a day. Is that what you believe? Are you working 19 hours a day, or is there an easier way about it?
I've gone through different stages, Ben, on that one. I've certainly gone through stages when I have worked 19 hours a day. And if I'm really honest, most of that time it was due to my own inefficiency. It was due to my own lack of ability in certain areas. It was due to being a bit of a martyr. It was easier to, get my small business medal of honor to say that I haven't had a holiday in 10 years and supposed to supposedly be proud of that instead of embarrassed by a statement like that. But I've also gone through stages where my sister died suddenly of a heart attack at the age of 35, and that was a big realization for me and a big awakening as well. It was obviously devastating to have that happen. We were really, really close. But also I was running a business at the time and I was working ridiculous hours, and I made the plan. And what I did was I committed to triple my income. I actually wanted to double my income within and halve the amount of hours that I worked within 6 months. that was a goal that I set myself, and I achieved that. And most of it was reprogramming myself, reprogramming my beliefs and limiting beliefs and all that stuff. So I believe it's achievable, but I feel a bit hypocritical because right at this moment in time, I am working really hard because I'm building a number of new businesses. And so I'm putting in fairly long days and new partnerships, but I'm okay to do that because I know that in 12 months' time, these will all be set up, and I will certainly be able to take it a lot easier than once they're all in place. But building new websites, new partnerships, all that kind of stuff takes a lot of time and energy. But anyone I'm coaching or mentoring or whatever it is that are working as hard as I'm working now, I would be telling them not to do that.
Yeah.
I don't think it needs to be that hard.
Yeah, okay. And so when you say you're working hard, though, you're working hard on, not in, aren't you, by the sounds of things?
Absolutely. Exactly. Yeah. Exactly right. Because again, it's part of my big, evil master plan, and there's 5 or 6 little parts and chunks that need to be done in there. And it's high level, it's strategic, it's thinking. I've got, 4 books that I'm working on to come out in the next 12 months. There's a lot of that kind of stuff. But I also have the realization for myself, mate, that I'm 51 and I want to make the next 20. I'm working on my 20-year plan at the moment. I've got a guy helping me to put a 20-year plan together. And my view is I don't want people to tell me to slow down. I want people to tell me to speed up.
Yeah.
And that's just where I'm at the moment for me. And I get that everyone is different, and I am never one to say, look, just because I'm doing this doesn't mean you need to be doing it. But I want to make the next 20 years count.
Which is important. I think that, and that is funny as we get older, because I always looked at 50 as being really old. Now I'm 44. I'm going, it's not far off.
No, you're approaching middle age.
Yeah. I think I'm past it. Who knows? My doctor always says, Ben, life is a terminal illness, so enjoy it whilst you're alive. He's very motivating, my doctor.
Nice. Yeah, very motivating.
So how many businesses have you built over your lifetime? Do you have the number or a rough guess?
Probably a dozen, I guess.
Okay.
Around that, I think in that time frame, not a huge number, but not a small number. I mean, I started quite a few, sold them, inherited a few businesses from people that didn't want them, did that kind of stuff, but yeah, that's probably about the number of them. Different types of businesses, obviously, different locations, different places, and probably dabbled in quite a few as well that never really kind of took off.
Yeah, great. So dozen businesses, you must have learned a thing or two. What do you feel are the sort of top few skills that somebody needs to build a business? So someone's listening to this and they want to be more successful. Maybe they're struggling right now to get their business idea off the ground.
Sure.
What are some of the key skills you feel that you've had to, that you either had them or that you've had to learn to make yourself, be successful? Mm-hmm.
That's a great question. I think for me, a skill that's been really, really invaluable has been the ability to learn how to communicate. I spend a lot of time and energy on being the best communicator that I can be. And of course, being a communicator means being able to listen as well, being empathetic. Communication is also for me about curiosity. I'm extraordinarily curious about everything, and that helps me better understand my customers and their challenges and issues. So if you roll that all into one big banner, communication is vital. And I see a lot of businesses that are really disconnected from their customers these days, and a lot of this is communication related issues. I always say that the day an Excel spreadsheet is more important than a conversation with a customer is the day that your business is in trouble. And the problem is, the bigger the business gets, the less time we tend to spend client facing, and that it is problematic. Yeah, in my opinion.
Yeah, we see some of those larger businesses with a monopoly in Australia that really seem to struggle with that a whole concept, don't they?
Well, they don't actually know what the word customer means. You got to go to places like Japan, and then you start to look around. I did a study tour of Japan with a client of mine last year, and you start to really understand. I've been to Japan many times, but this was different to go there in its working environment and start to see things. Well, this is what customer service actually means. I've never been anywhere in the world that has the same level of service, in my opinion, as it does in Japan. Another kind of quality that I think that I've learned over the years is certainly a desire to learn. I don't know if that's the right wording for it, but I spend between 5 and 7 a.m. pretty much every day learning stuff. So it's whether it be online, watching TED Talks, whether it be reading, whether it be writing, whatever it might be, whether it be learning how to use some form of technology, whatever the case may be. For me, it's about you have to be growing as an entrepreneur. And I see a lot of people in business, they get caught up in the day-to-day doing, and they actually stop growing. They just caught doing, and they do more and more doing, try and fit more and more doing in, but they're not actually getting better. And that's something that I've invested in a lot over the years. I spent a lot of money in my own personal development and growth, and that for me is a really big one.
So every day every day you're doing 2 hours of learning.
Yep.
Wow. Okay.
Absolutely.
Cool. Yeah.
That's best 2 hours of my day.
Yeah.
You know, and you go, that's what makes my business as successful, is that 2 hours.
Great. So communication, investing and learning, and a fair chunky day. That's nearly 10% of your day. I think it's awesome. What else?
I think another one is a real key is peer groups. And I'm sure this is stuff that you talk about a lot. I know you do, Ben, around the importance of having, the right people in your life. Most of the time, again, over the years when I've been advising people in business for whatever role or reason, I really see a major correlation between their success or otherwise based on the people that are around them. If things are not going well, they tend to have other businesses or business owners around them who are not doing as well either. And there starts to be a little bit of the misery club starts to form, which is, that's the fast track to disaster, in my opinion. And this is nothing new, stuff we've all heard about, I'm sure, but it's like about you got to have people in your life that pull you up and, propel you and challenge you and make you want to be better. And I've been fortunate enough in my adult life to have people like that around, and I'm like that for a lot of people these days. I'm the one who will challenge, I'll hold them accountable, and I expect others to do the same of me. So the peer group element is really vital, I think. For me, at least, it's been really vital.
Yeah, and we've seen a big surge of that, haven't we? In the last 5 years, it's getting easier and easier to jump into a group of entrepreneurs that are going to support each other. So there's no excuses, is there?
That's right. There aren't any excuses, but also I think it's easy to underestimate that and be too busy for it. It's like, who can spend 2 hours a day learning? Well, the reality is, for me, I couldn't afford to not spend 2 hours a day learning. That's the way I look at it. And I think there's a lot of this kind of stuff that we have to do. The fourth one for me, I'll keep going all day with these, but the fourth one, there's a great quote by Alvin Toffler, who wrote the book Future Shock. And it says, it's along the lines of, I might be paraphrasing it, but the illiterate of the 21st century won't be those who can't read or write, but it's those who can't learn, unlearn, and then relearn. And I think that we're all going through this in business where we're constantly having to have to forget about what we've learnt on that side of things, and we've got to go and learn new stuff. I guess that kind of ties into my earlier tip. But I look at that and saying that we have to have an incredibly open mind in business these days. And just because we master something today, it doesn't mean that that's going to be of any value tomorrow. And that's one of the challenges in the entrepreneurial space, is that we have to constantly be reinventing ourselves. We have to constantly be keeping up with our customers. We have to, constantly be, in learning and improving. And that's tough, but it's something that I've done a lot of work in. And interestingly, Ben, this trip that I was on in Japan, I met one of the owners of an old company there, and in the foyer, they had a sewing machine, and it was a Toyota sewing machine, right? And who knew Toyota made sewing machines? I had
no idea until just now.
Toyota started out as a textile company. They made fabrics.
Oh, okay. Wow.
And this company that I was seeing, they had been working with Toyota since day one. And so they'd had a long, 80, 90-year partnership. And I said to him, to the owner's grandson, I said to him, why have you been so successful, or what do you think? And he said, because like Toyota, we're always planning for the day that people don't want to buy our products. And that was a very big and profound moment for me, because it made me realize again that it's such a beautiful and simple way to say stuff. But it was like, there's going to come a day when people don't want to buy what we're selling right now. And we need to be prepared for that. So their entire culture of this company was to say, what are we going to do when that day comes? Yeah. So what are we going to be selling tomorrow? And their whole energy is put into the future and what are we going to be selling? And I think there's a great lesson to be learned from that for all of us, because we, particularly in Australia at times, we have a little bit of a view that it's never going to end. People are going to buy what we're selling forever. People are going to want my videos forever. My VHSs from my video rental store. And the world is changing at such a rapid rate. We need to live with that philosophy, in my opinion.
Yeah, look, with this rapid innovation and change, and it is, I think they're saying the change that used to happen in 30 years is now taking 3 years.
Yeah.
How do you go about generating new ideas? Because people are busy. They're probably already thinking, how am I going to find 2 hours a day to do this learning stuff? And I've got to go and find a peer group. How do you go about finding new ideas? Because you're an innovator. There's no doubt about it.
Another skill that has been really, really helpful for me over the years is I spend a lot of time observing businesses. This is a curiosity factor. I'm extraordinarily interested in how people do what they do. I love innovation. Part of my learning that I do every day is to look at what are other businesses doing around the world. And I'm fortunate enough that I do travel around the world. I write for a lot of organisations around the world. I get to commentate for people like CBS on what is happening in the business world, in the small business world in particular. And of course, I get to meet, hundreds every year, thousands of, tens of thousands really, of incredible entrepreneurs. And so for me, I'm really, really hungry and I'm really, really interested to see what they do and how they do what they do. And I would encourage everyone to spend some time and just be looking. Go to sites like Springwise. Just do a Google search, you'll find it. Springwise is an amazing site which is about what innovative people are doing around the world, innovative businesses. Because for me, it's about seeing what other people are doing and saying, well, how can I incorporate that into my business? Okay, this is a trend. This is what's happening. So what is that going to mean for me? How am I going to do what I need to do? And it might be something as simple as, in London, there's a bus now in London, which is all the seats have been taken out of it, but they've fitted spin bikes. So you can actually do a spin class on the way to work on the double-decker bus. Now, this, to me, might sound gimmicky, might sound weird, but to me it says so much about people being time deprived, about the need for fitness, about the need for innovation. And of course, this business is fully booked out. Now in Paris, there's a boat that you can do the same thing on. It's pedal powered up and down the river for tourists saying, well, we've eaten too much cheese and friggin' bagels or baguettes. Now we've got to work this off a bit. So it's a pedal powered big boat that they're working. So I have this fascination for new and innovative businesses that helps me advise other businesses on creative ways to do what they do better. And I think every business owner, we've got to stop looking in and we've got to start looking outwards to a large degree. I don't think you ever want to take your eye off your business, but we've got to be looking for innovative ideas from outside of our own business, from outside of our own industry, and to be honest, from outside of our own country and say, right, what does that mean? How could I adopt that and bring that back into my business?
Yeah, it's good stuff. I think too many businesses haven't innovated, haven't they? We're seeing they're casualties of the whole thing. So,
well, and a little point I would add to that, Ben. You look at something. I mean, everyone talks about Uber and uses Uber as an example, and my question is always, who's going to come along and Uberize Uber? It'll only be a matter of time until some smart organisation will outdo Uber. But I look at it and go, well, imagine an organisation like the Roman Catholic Church, not necessarily known as being the most progressive of businesses and all the rest of it, certainly very wealthy. But in Rome, there's an app now, which is you can call a priest on an app like Uber and say, okay, well, I'm at home and I need the services of a priest. You open up your app and go, bang, yes, I'm here, send me a priest. And a little map will come up and the little map will show you the priest is on their way. They'll do whatever they do, and then when they leave, a little rating thing will come up. You've got to give them the number of angels' wings that you rate this priest by, exactly like the Uber concept. But for priests.
An angel's rating, I love it.
and you look at that and go, if the Roman Catholic Church can innovate enough to have an Uber app for a priest on a scooter, and I haven't got an app, like you've got to turn around and go, wow, like if they can do it as one of the least progressive organisations on the planet, then what excuse have we got for not being more progressive?
Yeah. Hey, mate, I'm always interested to ask this question of other entrepreneurs, and that is to find out what motivates you. What is it that really drives you each day when you get up? Is there a particular thing?
You ask really great questions, Ben. To be honest, what are the things that drive me? I know a lot of people say this, but it is certainly true for me. It's not really about making money. It is much more, I'd like to make something and sell it. I definitely do. I come up with an idea, I turn it into a reality, and someone buys it, whether it be a program or a book or a workshop or whatever it is. I must say I do love that. But the thing that I love the most, and again, this will sound terribly cliche, but I love to teach people stuff that I know how to do or that I figured out, that I know that if I teach them how to do this, it'll make their life better. So hence I teach people to write books. I teach people to be a speaker. I teach people to do their business better. that really floats my boat.
Yeah, and it's interesting to hear you say that. I know you said it was cliche, but I think it is just part of the formula for being a successful entrepreneur. Well, I mean, you've seen a lot of businesses. Do you think that the ones that you've seen that are successful, would it be a trend that they're not focused on the money, that they are actually focused on servicing their clients in a great way and being helpful in some way, making something more efficient? Yeah.
Absolutely, not a moment's doubt in my mind that the most successful ones on every level are driven by anything but finances. But in the same vein, though, I think that the really successful ones reach a stage where they're not afraid of making money. You know, it's not like money is evil. I'm not afraid of making money. I'm not afraid of charging, you know, what I think I'm worth. I'm not afraid of any of that kind of stuff. And I do really well in my business, but it isn't the number one motivator. And I think when you can kind of come to peace with making money but your number one motivator is to teach or to help others, then I think that's, for me at least, there's a real contentment that comes out of that.
Yeah. And what about fears? I know for myself, as a business, owning a business, quite often I grapple with the fears of making commitments and big decisions and hiring people and leases. Are you ever crippled by fear? Is there anything that just scares the crap out of you?
Not really. Not really these days. I think I've probably, again, got enough runs on the board now to believe in myself to be able to achieve stuff. I'm not afraid so much of that. Certainly in the past, Ben, without a doubt, it was a big decision to sign a 12-year lease, you know, 3-3 or 3 or 4-4 and 4 or whatever it might be. Or every employing someone was always, this is someone's livelihood here. This is someone's future, their family, you know, like they were not decisions that you would, you know, sign lightly on the bottom of the page. But I think and I hope that most of us reach a stage where we kind of go, you know what, I've got enough evidence to say, well, I've been successful, and I've certainly come close to the wind a number of times, but I've always managed to get through. I always managed to make money. I always managed to do what I do. So I guess enough of a track record to go, you know what, I'll make whatever I do work, whatever that looks like, or I will walk away from it before it sends me broke. You know, that's the kind of the other way. To get back to your question earlier on about did you hang on to the business for too long, and that's certainly one of the big issues that I do see, mate, is I think too many people do hang on to a dead dog business for too long.
But do you think that's because maybe they fear what they might? I mean, because they don't know what they're going to do. It's what their comfort zone, isn't it?
And that's exactly it. It's not so much, well, we're going to lose all this money if we kind of, have to walk away from the business. Most of the time it's, well, what am I going to do? And the problem is, they'll hang on to a business that they need to let go of for 5 or 10 years longer, be in a worse position, but they could have gone out, even if it meant they went bankrupt. And here I am telling people, sometimes you are better off to go bankrupt. And to lose it, to have 3-4 years of grief, but then you can get on with your life. I've seen people hang on to businesses that they shouldn't have for much longer than that, and it's affected their relationship, their health, every part of their life has been affected when the business just didn't work, and to be honest, was never going to work because they'd made some bad mistakes. It was in the wrong location. They bought a VHS video hire store, in 2015. It was kind of those things that you look at and go, look, I admire you for what you've done, but this business ain't going to work, unless you shut it down and reopen it as a hamburger store. Oh, but we haven't. Normally by that time, they haven't got the money, they haven't got the energy that, and they begin that spiral down, which, you look in their eyes and go, I can give you all the ideas in the world. You're going to tell me all the reasons why you can't do it. This business is just not going to last. And it's very, very tough. I don't say that lightly or flippantly or in any shape or form, but the best advice I've offered to many people over the years has been to shut their doors.
Yeah. And I mean, we see a lot of people too that are bootstrapping businesses on the hope of getting some sort of funding. What's your thoughts on having enough capital behind you? Because there are a lot of people doing it on the smell of an oily rag and they're just not getting anywhere.
Well, and that's what's changed, though, in the last 20 years for me. So with me in other businesses, I've had to, have a long lease. So a 12-year lease, could be the equivalent of, $1 million worth of rent. You had to employ 10, 20 staff. There's, a couple $100,000 in salary all the time. I mean, we had to invest a lot into our businesses then. And I don't want to do like when I was a boy, I had to go 1,000 miles in a snowstorm to buy a loaf of bread. But there was a lot of commitment. So, and you had to make it work, because if you didn't, you're going to lose everything. Whereas now it's easy to start a business on a credit card. And what I see with a lot of younger entrepreneurs, and again, I'm not trying to be negative or slag anyone off, but you put 20 grand into a business and it doesn't work, you go, oh, well, I'll walk away from it, I'll pay that off and I'll do something else. So I find that businesses, there isn't as much conviction a lot of the time because there's not as much to lose. You got 500 grand on the line, man, you will do what it takes to make it work most of the time, because to not is just too big to recover from in many respects.
Yeah, true. I think that's very true because what is it? Buckminster Fuller, the I don't even know. He was like a scientist way back when, and he had a whole bunch of theories, and one was the law of vacuum, and he said that everything will grow to fill the available space, and hence, you earn more money, you spend it, you get a bigger house, you fill it, and I think if you have a big lease, you make sure you pay it.
Yeah, exactly. There's nothing like that monthly commitment, to make you do stuff. And I do see this a lot, I do see this thing where there's a lot more home-based businesses and all that, which is awesome. I love the idea that I run a home-based business, but we're not making spice racks, in sheltered workshops. We're running, professional multi-million-dollar businesses that from home, and we can do that kind of stuff. So I guess one of the trends is now that at least you can have a more profitable business if you don't necessarily have to have the higher overheads. But it's a changing time. It means it's harder for us to market to those people because they're not, shop frontage on a street and all other types of things there. But it's such a changing and dynamic time in business. I think there's so many challenges and so many opportunities. Larger companies that predominantly have small business clients are struggling to connect and engage. And I just recently started a company called Small Business Mob, and we're teaching and training corporates on how to communicate with small businesses. They've got no idea how to do it, and they're finding it harder and harder to communicate and to sell to them. Yet for us, we know how to sell to each other because that's what we do all day long. So it's an extraordinary time to be in business, and I don't think there's ever been a better time to be in business, and I don't think there's ever been a more challenging time to be in business. Yeah.
And what would you say is attributed to your success the most, if you had to sum it up in one or two sentences?
Without a doubt, it would be my attitude, I think. And I don't want to sound like, I'm being simple in this, but I have an attitude which is, I'll do what it takes. I'll work hard. I'm positive. I'm incredibly optimistic. I'm humble enough to learn from others. I'm humble enough to learn from my mistake. And if I look at all of the people that I've worked with over the years, that to me, attitude is such an important factor in their success. And I think it's maybe something you have. I think personally it's one of those things that you can develop as well. But without a doubt, my attitude and also my resilience. I'm very, very resilient. I've been through some very, very trying times over the years, like most of us. But I bounce back really strongly, Ben, and I bounce back really quickly, and I've got better and better at that over the years, whereas it might have taken me a year or two to bounce back in the past, will now take me a day to bounce back from something terrible that's happened, and that's been a good skill to develop, and I do think it's a skill, resilience.
Yeah, that's an absolutely amazing skill, I think, and to be able to bounce back, because you have to, don't you? I mean, that's just that's small business. I'm always interested to ask authors, if there's a book that's inspired them besides their own, of course. Is there a book that you've read that's absolutely been an amazing inspiration to you in your journey?
There is, and this is a book, Dale Carnegie's. I'm sure you've read it, How to Win Friends and Influence People. Yeah. I read it when I was 18. A friend of mine gave it to me, and I read it every Christmas morning, and I've read it every Christmas morning since then. So I've read it 33 times, roughly. And it is every time I read it, it feels like I've never read it before. And I do this, and one of my greatest skills is my ability to interact, communicate, connect with human beings, not so much animals, but I attribute that 100% to that book. And I was fortunate enough to be given that book by a very wise guy at a very young age, and that turned me on to personal development. I'd never read a book like that in my life before then. But it taught me about the value of learning. It taught me about the value of interacting with people, about being connected and being able to build rapport, and to be, in the world that we live in now. I'm going to say to anyone who hasn't read that book, you need to read it. Yeah, it's a terrible title. Yes, it was written in 1936. But if you can find a more relevant book, for 2017, I don't know where you'll find one.
Yeah, great stuff, great stuff. Well, mindful that we're running out of time, mate. It's been an absolute blast. Gosh, I love talking to you on this podcast, and I know the listeners love listening to you too. I hope you still got a few more stories up your sleeve about the animal attacks, because we're going to have to get you back on sometime.
I would love. Unfortunately, Ben, I have many stories about animal attacks. There's no shortage of fodder on those. Let me just mention words like moray eels. I got stuck under a cow in India. Yeah, mate, look, you name it. This is a long list of weird animal interactions. I'm going to write a book about it one day. Why do animals hate me? Yeah. I'm going to call it, So anyway, I'd love to come back on the show. 101
animal attacks. How can people find out more, buddy?
Sure, mate. Just my website's really easy. It's just www.andrewgriffiths.com.au, and everything is there. That's my home. You can check me out there, and if anyone wants to drop us a line, please feel free.
All right, fantastic. We'll put all that in the show notes. So if you did miss that, you'll be able to jump onto businessbrainfood.com and go to BBF125, and all the links will be there. Anything Andrew's mentioned will be in the show notes. Now, Andrew, all we've got left, mate, is the 60-second scramble. Are you ready for that?
I was born ready for this, Ben.
All right, let's get the clock ticking. Favourite app on your phone?
0.
Oh, no. That's a bit nerdy.
How tragic is that?
What's your biggest addiction?
TED Talks at the moment.
Listening to them or doing them? Because I know you just did one, didn't you?
Oh, I did one a while ago. Imagine if we were 33% less angry was my TED Talk, but listening to them is definitely my biggest addiction at the moment.
Great stuff. Do you have a favourite inspirational quote?
Oh God, none that I can think of.
That's right.
I have many, but I've gone completely blank.
All right, number one tip for being more efficient
is to stop multitasking.
Best way to tune out and relax?
For me, is to get out in the wild, anywhere wild.
Anywhere wild. What's your favourite drink?
Gin and tonic.
This is a funny one. If you'd be any animal, what would you be and why?
Oh, well, okay, yeah, no, that's a tough one. I'd be a grizzly bear. And I'd be a grizzly bear because I kind of look a bit like a grizzly bear, and I kind of like all the attributes of a grizzly bear. They're kind of, they sleep for 3 or 4 months of the year, which I kind of like the idea of that. But they're kind of big, but they're kind of soft, and, they're kind of tough, but they're not. That kind of thing.
Tough on the outside, soft on the inside, eh?
Yeah, that's me.
Well, once again, mate, thanks so much for coming on the Business Brain Food podcast. It's been a pleasure, mate, as usual. Enjoy the rest of your day, and thanks again.
Thanks, Ben. Thanks to your listeners as well, mate. I really enjoyed coming on your show. You always ask very cool questions, mate. Thank you.
Cheers, mate.
Learn more to earn more.
Well, I always feel like amazingly energised, motivated. I don't even know what the right words are. After chatting with Andrew, I just feel uplifted. The guy is just one of those people that I think he's sent to us because, he does lift you. And I know... I know there's a lot in there that he said. Like he said, there's a lot of things in there that are cliche, but how true is it? How true is it that it comes back to things like attitude and just looking after your customers, and it's not about the money, So I think a lot of lessons there, a lot of good tips, a lot of great chatter. Make sure you head across to andrewgriffiths.com.au. We'll put the link into the show notes. So it was Business Brain Food, BBF125, so you can go there. But andrewgriffiths.com.au. Go and check out his website. I love his website too. You'll have a good giggle when you get there. His personality definitely shines through in his website. So there you go. Andrew Griffiths, amazing bloke. Thanks again for coming on the show, buddy. And hopefully we'll get you back on the show somewhere in the future, and we'll have another chat about things business, because it was awesome. All right, now just to wrap things up real quickly, what have I got coming up? If you haven't already, businessfasttrack.com.au. I've still got a couple of events left. So tomorrow I'm going to be in Melbourne running my free workshop for business owners, taking you through my 5 stages of business acceleration. Next week I'm going to be in Sydney doing the same presentation. And then at the end of March, I'm going to be in Newcastle at the Future Business Expo. Now, the Future Business Expo, if you are up in that Central Coast Newcastle area, you need to get along to that, because it's a day where we'll be working. I'm one of the guest speakers for the day, but there's going to be other guest speakers as well. It's all about your business in the future. And it's funny because with Andrew, we spoke a little bit about innovation and coming up with ideas and being prepared for the fact that the future may change the way that you do business. So Future Business Expo, just Google it, you'll find it, Newcastle. Get yourself a ticket, and I look forward to seeing you there. All right, well, that's it for this week's show. Once again, thanks so much for tuning into the Business Brain Food podcast. If you're loving it, as I said earlier, head across to the iTunes store, leave an honest review and rating. Until next time, have yourself a very, very profitable day. I've been Ben Futrell. You've been absolutely wonderful for tuning in and listening. See you next time.
You can fly higher than the